Morning, good morning, good morning. It is 5:30 in the morning. That means that it is time for us to start drawing. We do this every day at 5:30. Today we're going to draw. What are we drawing today? Oh my goodness. No, that's a goat. Somebody didn't set the stage like they were supposed to last night. And that somebody is me. Oh my goodness. You guys need to see what we're drawing, and it's this thing right there. There we go. There we go. You know what? I've been down here for over an hour messing with this, and I completely forgot that part. So good morning. Good morning. It is 5:30 in the morning on what is today? Friday? Is it Friday? Friday. On Friday mornings at 5:30 in the morning, we take a random object from the Random Object Randomogrifier and we draw it. We actually do that every day. And today's random object is a frontier cook. It is a bent over little old lady that looks like I feel. And she is carrying a heavy kettle. And she is obviously a cook is what you're supposed to get from this. So my mom's laughing. And she looks like I feel for sure. All right, so the block in goes really quick because you just block in the big shapes. You just want to make sure that the object's going to fit on the page. So this little old lady right here, and you can't really tell other than the fact that she's hunched over, might give you the impression that she's a little old lady, but she could just be bent over the fire. She doesn't have to be a little old lady. But when you see her face, you can see they gave her some features that are meant to make her look older, if you will. And she's carrying that big kettle. And so she's an older woman cooking like Granny from the Beverly Hillbillies. She's dressed in the 1800s style, suggesting she's a frontier lady. She's got that apron and that outfit on that makes her look like she's directly out of the frontier from the 1800s. But you know, Granny dressed like that on the Beverly Hillbillies too. Most of the people watching this show are probably old enough to remember the Beverly Hillbillies. But the Beverly Hillbillies, and we're going to talk about them a lot today because there's a lot about this scene in particular that the Beverly Hillbillies got right. Because if you go back and you look at the frontier cookbooks and you look at the tasks that were assigned to the frontier cooks, especially on the wagon trail, you will see that many of the tasks that Granny gave herself, like cook, medic, seamstress, all of that stuff fell on this person right here. So it's not that far off. If you've never seen the Beverly Hillbillies, and I can understand if you haven't, because the Beverly Hillbillies were, almost 100 years ago. you know, the television show was what, 60s? The television show came out in the 60s. So that's 60, 40, 60 years ago. And I was laughing about that the other day. We were drawing when we were drawing the goat, and they were talking about how they introduced the goats to the Appalachians, how they did that in the mid 20th century. And I said, yeah, but the mid 20th century was only 50 years ago. No, the mid 20th century was 75 years ago. 1950 was 75 years ago. And I mentioned on the show I could feel my skin turning to dust as I read the notes. So yeah, it's not. Beverly Hillbillies was 60 years ago. And I thought, well, but they just recently made a movie. Well, that movie that they just recently made was 30 years ago. So they didn't just recently make a movie. It's not just the other day. So even our modern reference to the old frontiers people is older than what we're ready to admit, what I'm ready to admit. So I understand if you haven't seen the Beverly Hillbillies, but if you haven't, I weep for you because it's really entertaining. Totally worth watching. The show, I don't know so much about the movie. I've seen the movie. Uh, Jim Varney playing Jed Clampett. I mean, it's worth watching, but it's not. I don't think it compares to Buddy Epstein and Ellie Mae Clampett. And Granny, who was actually one of the younger people on the show. Buddy Epson. Buddy Epson, yeah. I don't know what I was thinking. I was thinking, why is that arm so short? I know what I was thinking. I was thinking, why is that arm so short? And I was trying to figure that out while I was trying to remember a name at the same time. So in the show, you've got Ellie Mae Clampett with all kinds of critters. She's got possums and she's got raccoons and she's monkeys. She has all kinds of critters running around because she's an animal loving girl, and the animals listen to her and she can kind of communicate with them because she's she's got away with them, and they make it sound like she's got away with them because she's so pretty, and I understand that. But you also have Granny trying to cook the animals, and that was very true to life. These frontier cooks had to make do with what they could find, and often what they could find was not stuff that you and I would consider edible. But they had recipes. They had recipes for this stuff. So if you want to try it, they had things like squirrel fricassee. Squirrel fricassee, where you cut the squirrel up into little pieces and bread it, fry it up with some flavorful roots. And you could just, if you really wanted to try it, I mean, you could just step outside. I'm sure there's squirrels in your neighborhood because that's what they did. Just step outside and see what they could catch because that's what you depended on. You couldn't go to the store. You couldn't go. It might the general store might be a couple of days ride away, so you had to stock up on your supplies like beans and stuff, and flour and sugar. You had to stock up on those things. But if you ran out, you had to make do. So you had to know how to do it. You had to know that you're not going to have fresh fruit to make pies with all the time. So you learn to make vinegar pie. And I want to try it. I read the recipe for the vinegar pie, and I think we should try it. It sounds like something I would enjoy. But you can get vinegar from your homemade wine that you didn't drink fast enough. So vinegar was readily available for cleaning and canning and making vinegar pie, apparently. Can't talk, Harding. I sometimes have the hardest time with ellipses. I don't know if anybody else has a hard time with ellipses, but sometimes ellipses just escape my abilities. Anyway, where were we? Oh, yeah, recipes. Vinegar pie, squirrel fricassee. Let me know if you'd like to see any of these recipes on the blog. You know, I put all the show notes on the blog uh, later on, and I put a lesson plan. Oh, my mother's talking in my ear about uh, sourdough bread. How during COVID people were reviving things like sourdough bread, and that everybody was fussing about having exactly the right pan, exactly the right pot, exactly the right equipment. These pioneer women just had to make do with what they had. And she's absolutely right. That's one of the things that I had on my list to talk about, and she brought it up just at the right time too, because you've got this nice little coated skillet that won't let anything stick to it, and they had an iron skillet that they had to use for everything from making coffee to boiling possums. So if you would like a, I do a blog, theartisticbiker.com, and on the blog I put basically a summary of what we talk about on the show, and then I put a lesson plan for teachers to download that is only loosely affiliated with the show. You don't have to watch the videos for the lesson plans to be able to use the lesson plans. But let me know if you'd like any of the recipes on there. I think I'm going to go ahead and put the possum stew recipe on there because and maybe the or at least a link to the possum stew or the vinegar pie. I don't know that we're going to eat possum stew, but I think we're going to try that vinegar pie. But yeah, they had to just make do with what they had. The stores were anything that would be considered a store was entirely too far away. You couldn't just go get more vegetables. You had to know what you could forage out of the woods. You had to know what you could grow, and especially if you were a new settler in the area, it would take a while for your bean crop to come in. It would take a while for your uh, for your garden to come in. So you had to have some kind of knowledge of what you could eat off the side of the road, out of the woods, out of the you know, and you got a lot of that from other people that settled around you. You got a lot of that from the Native Americans, from the Indians that were, we only ever hear about the bad stuff. You only ever hear about the struggles that the Native Americans had with the settlers and that the settlers had with the Native Americans. You only ever hear about the bad stuff. You hardly ever hear about the cooperation that happened because people need to survive, and you need cooperation to survive. And the Native Americans knew that, and the settlers knew that, and they did cooperate a whole lot more than what television or movies will let you see. If you plant a garden and you open your garden up to people, you make friends pretty fast. And you're talking about a time period when Leviticus was pretty important to people. And in Leviticus it says plant extra rows for the rabbits and the widows and the thieves, because rabbits and widows and thieves need to eat too. And if you did that, you had extra to help with your neighbors, your friends, the people who helped you figure out what you could eat from the forest. We don't do that often anymore, though. I see my neighbors once in a while, but I don't plant food for them. But that's neither here nor there. Back to what we were talking about. They they would have to cooperate with the people that were already there that could tell them what was edible. And then there was a lot of experimentation. This looks like the same kind of collard green that we had back home. Let's see if it's just as edible as the collard green. And my dad tells stories about how his dad would be driving down the road and get excited, see collard greens growing on the side of the road, and would get excited and pull over and pick some for dinner. And my wife will tell you about her dad driving down the road and identifying crops and stuff growing on the side of the road and growing in the fields. And these were important. These were important skills to have as a frontier person, but especially as a frontier cook. But especially as a frontier cook, these would have been important skills to have. Almost equally important. You know, if you're going to be going out into the woods and just picking stuff willy-nilly and trying it out, you better have some kind of knowledge of how to cure an upset tummy. So that's another thing that they credited Granny with in the Beverly Hillbillies, was she was Dr. Granny with her medical kit and her cure for whatever ails you. These ladies had recipes for just about anything that might work as a poultice or a something for indigestion. And you'd have to, because you're experimenting with different stuff that you're finding in the woods. You'd have to have some kind of knowledge about what would cure the side effects. My mom says just a little bit of the wrong plant and there could be real problems. Minor illnesses, more severe reactions. Yeah, but here's the kicker on that. Minor illnesses on the frontier quickly become major illnesses because you don't have any way to treat it at all. Minor illnesses quickly become major illnesses. You know, even a slight infection could easily blow up into a lost leg if not recognized and treated. And the only people to treat these kind of things were these people that had the knowledge to do it. Because the town doctor was miles away. Let's see, Hirsch. That's a pretty good color for that shirt. Little burnt orange, little long hair spirit, longhorn spirit. Don't let my wife hear me say that though. She'll disown me. Little burnt orange shirt she's got on. But they had recipes for stuff like blackberry medicine, blackberry cordial. They'd have that have a little blackberry wine tucked away in the cupboard, and they just give a kid a spoonful to help them sleep, or they give the adults a small wine glass full. And you know, I've made blackberry wine, and I completely understand why you would hide it in the cupboard and not tell anybody you have some, because it is very good. So I completely understand why you would be stingy with that blackberry wine and not tell anybody you had it. They would call it medicine. They would, I'm gonna give me a little bit of my medicine. Yeah, a little glass of blackberry wine, absolutely. And if you didn't drink it fast enough and it turned to vinegar, you could make a pie. How are we doing on time? Oh, good Lord, it's already 5:52. We got to get on with this. We have got to get on with this. Just long hair in my paintbrush making stray marks. Not my hair. I don't have any. Well, I guess it could be a beard hair. Could be back hair. Who knows? I think I may darken the background just a little bit to make her hat stand out white. I think I may may come in with just a little bit of color. My mother in my ear going, "Good Lord." We'll put a little ground tone in the background there. Make that hat stand out white. When you do that, we always talk about when you do this, you want to make sure you go over the shadow too. Otherwise, the shadow will just look like shade on your object and not shade on the ground. There we go. I like that. That worked out well. That worked out well. I did miss the handles of this pot though. Let me get that real quick. And the spoon. And the spoon. There we go. Let me dry that real quick and we'll come back and ink it. So I ordered the new camera today. Little aside for the show notes. I ordered a new camera today, and it will allow me to be over my shoulder. So instead of a photograph of this image to use as a reference, I'll have an over the shoulder view, which you'll be able to see it specifically from my perspective, and I'll be able to show you some of the challenges that I see when I'm drawing it so we can talk about it. It should be here tomorrow, which means that we should have it available for us for the Sunday show. Because I like for you to see what I see when I'm drawing. At this point, though, I'm not looking at the object anymore. The object part of it's done. All I'm doing now is at this point in the game, I'm just trusting the ancestors. My mom made a very good point just now in my ear about how we tend to forget the struggles that these folks went through and the things that they learned and passed on to us. You know, the knowledge and recipes and medicines that they knew back in their day are the source of many of the medicines that we have today. The skills that they picked up along the way of how to forage, how to bake, how to make do with what you had. There's been a renewed interest in it. If you go to the Renaissance fairs, there's usually a portion of the Renaissance fair set aside to frontier life. Or you might actually find a frontier fair near you. And if you go there, you will see people demonstrating all of these skills with different recipes for you to try, but different skills like how to make a bow and arrow from scratch. Where do you get the string for your bow and arrow? How do you do that? Different skills like how to make horseshoes and why you need horseshoes. Different skills like how to catch possums and the best way to tenderize possum meat. I am going to put the possum recipe on the website. It's artisticbiker.com. So I am going to put the possum recipe on the website because I have had possum. It's stringy and greasy. And it is 6 o'clock. So we're going to call that done. What is today? Today is the 8th. 08 of August, not July, 2025. And there are my initials. Alrighty. So that is what I did today. That is what I did today. Let's see if we can see it from my perspective. I also ordered a different holder for my phone so that I don't have to struggle with it like that. There we go. There it is from my perspective. And so that's that. That is what I did today. The little girl has already pulled us an egg for tomorrow. Oh no, it's a canister. So let's see what it might be. Dun, dun, dun. Oh! It's my auntie aunt. We got us a nice big bug to draw tomorrow. We'll have some fun with that. Spindly legs and everything. I'm not even going to try and read that. I'm pretty sure it just says ant. But it might say something besides ant. But this is what we're going to do tomorrow, August 9th. So if you're watching this August 9th and it's before 5:30 in the morning, then you're watching the trailer, and this is what we're about to draw and talk about. So stick around, and we'll get right on it. But for the rest of us, we're calling it a day because I have got to get to work. So thank you so much for joining me. You know, I look forward to this every day when I get to come downstairs and I get to art with my besties. It holds me accountable to my art practice. And I hope that you are drawing along too. I post all of these photos on my community page on the YouTube. So if you're watching this on YouTube, you can just click my name and go to my community page. You can see there's the reference photos. You can draw along. If you do, tag me in it. I'd like to see it. I'd love to share it with everybody else. So that said, be sure and tune in tomorrow. Same Artistic Biker time, same Artistic Biker channel. And we dance. We dance until somebody says they see me dancing, because that way it gives you a chance to click the links around the screen, and it makes sure that the lag catches up to the video. And I don't want to wait